Hi, we're Katy Taylor, Erin Boggs, and Catherine Jones, and we're going to be talking about Roger Sperry, his Nobel Prize, and split brain research. Roger Sperry was born in 1913 in New England to parents very academically focused. Throughout high school, he was a great athlete and eventually went to Oberlin College in Ohio. While there, he played sports and also held a job. He graduated with a degree in English, but his love for psychology led him to stay for a master's degree. After he earned his master's degree in psychology, he ventured to the University of Chicago to receive a doctoral degree in zoology. Later, after his work with primates at Harvard, he moved on to the California Institute of Technology, or Caltech, where Sperry discovered the potential for research with split-brain patients while working with split-brain cats. This is also where he met Michael Gazzaniga. Sperry won the Nobel Prize for split-brain work in 1981. Michael Gazzaniga was born in 1939 and still teaches at the University of California, Santa Barbara. He attended Dartmouth College and graduated in 1964. After, he moved on to Caltech and was lucky enough to work under Roger Sperry. He was one of his students who tested the split-brain patients. This work led him to continue research with the brain, most notably the functional lateralization of the brain.
The right hemisphere focuses primarily on creativity, art, imagination, music, and holistic thinking. A primary function of the left hemisphere is language. Recognizing words and verbal speech take place in this half of the brain. The left hemisphere also deals with analytical thinking, math, logic, and reasoning, in addition to science and attention to detail. So if each hemisphere is in charge of different functions, how does the brain work together as a whole? The corpus callosum connects these two hemispheres and facilitates communication between them. It is essentially a bridge of neural axons that carries messages from one side to the other. It's very important in that communication and helping both sides of the brain work together so that we can function efficiently and effectively in the world.
Part of my career and continues, I studied patients who had their two brains disconnected. What we were responsible for was working out the functions of each hemisphere. You could work with them independent of the other influencing it, so you kind of got to study it alone. And over many, many years, the basic finding is, of course, that one brain didn't know what the other one was doing in such people, that the information doesn't transfer between the brains. We found out that in the left brain, there's a special system that seems to always want to explain actions and moods that we have after they occurred. So we would put a question to the right non-speaking hemisphere, and it, in effect, would direct the left hand to do something. And so the patient would do that. And then we would simply say to the patient, well, why did you do that? The patient would make up a story that would explain why their hand had done one thing and why the other hand had done another thing, and wove a tale that made coherent, as it were, the behaviors that are coming from all these separate brain areas. The behavior comes out, and then there's this little narrator up there that turns it into a story that makes us feel coherent and unified. Turns out it's a thing in the left hemisphere that does this, and we called it the interpreter.
A full colostomy is a last resort in the treatment plan for epilepsy, especially associated with grand mal seizures. It is only considered after medication and partial colostomy have failed. Severing the corpus callosum was first used as a treatment for severe epilepsy in the 1940s. Physicians believed that they could contain electrical signals to just one hemisphere of the brain by severing the connection between both sides of the brain. Neurobiologist Roger Sperry used this to research whether or not the brain's two sides really did different function. Initial research from the 40s concluded that this severing of the corpus callosum did not affect human behavior, but Sperry and Gazzaniga's research a decade later found the opposite. Their animal subjects showed greatly altered brain functions and behavior in those who had the colostomy. One of the first news stories of corpus colostomy surgeries was performed in 1979 on a patient who had trouble coordinating her left and right hands to finish tasks. She also struggled with seizures, where the signals in her brain fired uncontrollably, causing convulsions. Her physician recommended a surgery that severed the connection between her right and left brain hemispheres. It was dangerous and controversial because this type of high-risk surgery was not a typical treatment for seizures at the time. As a result of the surgery, the patient was able to function and her seizures stopped. This type of research supported the idea that the brain could be two different functioning parts. The issues behind the research conducted by Sperry and Gazzaniga was that it was hard to find human subjects they could perform the same procedures on. Through the 1970s and early 80s, split brain research expanded, and neuroscientists became particularly interested in the capabilities of the right hemisphere, the one conventionally believed to be incapable of processing language and producing speech. The research Sperry and Gazzaniga did confirmed that both left and right hemispheres of the brain deal with language.
This is the laboratory of Dr. Kay Jones, one of the few who still performs corpus callosums. This is Dr. Kay Jones herself.
Welcome to my laboratory.
And here is Dr. Jones. We're about to get some rare footage of an actual colostomy.
My name is Katy Taylor, and I'm one of Dr. Jones's patients, and I've had my corpus callosum severed.
Close your eyes. Focus on the dot. I'm going to show you a word, and I want you to tell me what it is. Ready?
Cat.
Good. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Okay, focus on the dot. I'm going to show you a word, and I want you to tell me what it is. Okay? Ready?
I'm not sure.
Close your eyes. Keep your eyes closed. With your left hand, I want you to show me what you saw. Open your eyes.
A pig?
Yes!
When an image is projected within a patient's left visual field, the patient could draw the object, but would not be able to name it. Conversely, when an image is projected within a patient's right visual field, they would be able to name it, but not draw it. The brain responds this way because the hemispheres of the brain can no longer communicate. The picture projected to the left visual field would not transfer to the speech center of the brain in the left hemisphere because the nerve fibers relaying those messages are no longer intact.
In one case of naturally occurring split brain syndrome, a woman had a stroke in her corpus callosum. When she was admitted to hospital, she complained, among other things, that her left hand had a will of its own. The rogue hand would do things like close doors that the right had opened, shut books that the right hand was reading, or even snatch money back that the right had paid. Her two brains were no longer communicating and began making decisions independently.
The work of Roger Sperry was influential in the field of psychology. His research with split brain patients gave scientists a better understanding of how the brain operates, including the lateralization of the brain hemispheres and the role of the corpus callosum in neural communication. Modern psychology and neuroscience have flourished as a result of these findings, and his work continues to influence exploration and research in both of these fields. Thanks to Sperry, we have a better understanding of how our brains function.